Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us at Strauss & Company this afternoon. We're just 2 minutes off 4 o'clock. So I'm going to start with our introductions. Today, ladies and gentlemen, with Museum Moments, we're joined by the members of the team from the Oliewenhuis Art Museum. And we're going to be today hosted by Wilhelm van Rensburg. Wilhelm, you're going to be sharing our screens, I understand, yeah?
Right, that's right, that's right.
Okay. So we're going to today be talking about the establishment of the Oliewenhuis Museum and highlight both past and upcoming exhibitions. We're going to talk specifically, and I think this is a very important part of why Museum Moments has proved to be such an effective outreach, is we're going to talk about the extended education program, which I think Esther is something very close to your heart as a former education officer at the museum, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes, you're right.
I'm going to start with my introductions, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. We're joined by Wilhelm van Rensburg today, and Esther Leroux, the curator at the Oliewenhuis Art Museum in Bloemfontein. Particularly, I was just saying, Esther has been the curator since 2009, and before that, she occupied the position of education officer. So I think it's very important position for a curator to have occupied, because it brings into such sharp focus the vital role of museums in our culture and society at the moment. So thank you very much, Esther, for joining us today, and Wilhelm really for putting this team together. It's a wonderful contribution. I'm looking very much forward to it. Then we are joined by Bertha Everard, who studied at the Central University of Technology, and now works as an art guide at the Oliewenhuis. And it's going to be very interesting, I think, hearing the broader perspectives of museums as we have started seeing them around the country. We've really, I think, dashed all over the country already in Museum Moments. From the I think the last one we had was the Tatham Art Gallery in KwaZulu-Natal. So very nice to have them members of our most central province here today. And then Cornelie van der Berg will be joined by Yolanda de Kock. Yolanda is the education officer, has been the education officer since 2012, and originally studied at the University of the Free State, having completed her MA-FA in 2009, and then completed another degree at my alumni of Wits, having studied the MA in Heritage Management and completing that in 2017. A very interesting degree. I think I finished at Wits, I think a year or two before that was being put together, so I'm very excited to hear some of your perspectives there, Yolanda. Then sure. We'll be joined by Cornelie van der Berg, as I said, who has an MA in history from the University of the Free State, which she got that in 2015. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I see we are on 4 o'clock. So thank you very much for joining Strauss & Company today, and some of the curatorial team from the Oliewenhuis Art Museum for Museum Moments in Bloemfontein. And we're going to be joined by Wilhelm van Rensburg, who's going to be hosting us today. So Wilhelm, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining Strauss & Company this afternoon.
Okay, let me just there you go. Okay, welcome everybody. And of course, I want to start with this very imposing facade of the museum. And I want Esther to tell us a little bit about this wonderful building, and as well as a bit of the history of the museum.
The building was completed in 1941, and it was built by the Department of Works for as residence of the Governor General of the Union of South Africa. Then later it was used for when state presidents stayed over, but that was only for temporary stays. And then in 1989, it became an art museum. It's got quite a nice story. Yolanda will tell a little bit more about that, but there were a lot of pressure on the authorities at that stage to create an art museum in Bloemfontein. And after prolonged campaigning, President Pierneef Botha actually gave the building to be used as an art museum, and it became a satellite of the National Museum Bloemfontein. And the National Museum Bloemfontein is the agency of the Department of Arts and Culture.
Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, 1947 was also a big year for this building.
Yes, the royal family visited in 1947, and they had a 3-day stay in Bloemfontein, and they stayed at Oliewenhuis Art Museum. At that stage, it's been a while since it actually has been occupied because it was closed during the Second World War. So there was a lot of reparations needed to be done and preparation. So they're speaking of a workforce of almost 300 people working in the gardens and the building to get everything ready.
Okay, and here we see some installation photographs of the renovations that you mentioned. When was that? Was that the late 80s?
Yes, that was probably 1987, 1986, while it was being converted to an art museum. The previous slide, for example, you would see the installation of the infamous air conduct in the main building, because obviously a lot of things needed to be changed and to accommodate art and to have all the climate controls and conditions to conserve the artworks.
Yeah, great. And today you are absolutely a powerhouse. These images on the left I took from your promotion brochures, and on the right I just lifted some text, and it seems to me like your mission. Talk to us a little bit about your mission and your acquisition policy.
I think very shortly, what we do as an art museum is to look after, in our case, specifically South African artworks on behalf of the public of South Africa. And we share it with the public of South Africa. We share it through exhibitions, through education programs, and really to be a space where everyone is welcome, where everyone can access excellent and quality art, to make it available.
Yeah,
to
great,
the general
fantastic.
public and to a variety of people.
Earlier on, Matthew mentioned that, we crisscrossed the country and visiting all sorts of museums. Last week was the Tatham, and I was wondering if there was also like a founder collection. At the Tatham, it was Mrs. Ada Tatham who donated her collection, and we all know about, the Johannesburg Art Gallery and Lady Florence Phillips and Sir Hugh Lane, who put that wonderful a collection together. So maybe Yolanda, you can tell us about the founder collection.
Thank you, Willem. Oliewenhuis has quite a unique founding collection in my opinion. And one thing that I want to point out is the fact that all the beginning collections of Oliewenhuis was either donated or was being brought together by fundraising attempts from art-loving citizens in Bloemfontein. But I want to specifically speak now about the A.C. White donation. The work that you also see here of Thomas Baines, Bloemfontein vanaf Naval Hill in 1851 was one of the donations that he gave to Oliewenhuis, donated to Oliewenhuis. Now, A.C. White was the former mayor of Bloemfontein. He came to South Africa in the early 1900s, and he actually was one of the first individuals who collected South African art in Bloemfontein, but also he provided funds to the municipality to build the A.C. White Gallery. And then also the municipality thereafter, purchased artworks every year to build a South African collection. Now, today, this some of the works that was donated by the AC White, it forms part of the integral part of our beginning collections. Contains work of Pierneef, Maggie Laubser.
Yeah, this is an absolute wonderful work. It's almost surreal when you look at it, and if you look at the date 1851, it is breathtakingly beautiful. Especially if you look right dead center, that little church, which we will come back to in a minute. So not only this one, but if I'm not mistaken, this one as well. It's almost as if Baines took a couple of steps closer to town when he did this one.
And especially when we conduct guided tours for school children, this is absolutely fantastic, because Naval Hill, even today, is a familiar or quite a popular tourist attraction. And for people to view, now if you go up Naval Hill, this is not the view, obviously, you will get. So it echoes geographical areas in Bloemfontein. That is important, like the Tweetorenkerk or the Twin Tower Church.
Yeah, so there you are. I think this one is also from the AC, the Twin Tower Church in the background in the center there.
That's correct. That's correct.
But this one is Bertha Everard, but this is also part of the AC White collection.
That's correct, yeah.
And even this wonderful Gwello Gutman, Snow Scene in Scotland, Florence Phillips collected a lot of French impressionists, and here you have a British impressionist, if you like, in the collection. It's a massive work. Later on, there's an installation shot, and then you will be surprised at the size of this Gutman.
Yes, this is a permanent fixture at Oliewenhuis. We never take it off. We simply don't have storage space for it.
Fantastic. And you also mentioned the Pierneef, one of my favorites in the collection. Again, it's a monster of a work. It's enormous. I also included this work in my retrospective in 2015 at the Standard Bank Gallery. And I juxtaposed it with different versions, some more geometrical, some more impressionist, some cubist, and some realistic, and so on. So it was interesting to see where this one fits into his stylistic development.
Yes, we also keep Rustenburg Kloof up. People all over the country literally come to Oliewenhuis to view that artwork. It is
indeed. I'm not surprised. And then there was also the Dora Scott. Tell us about this part of the founder collection.
Yes, I don't think you've seen now the renovation photographs of Oliewenhuis. I don't think the establishment of Oliewenhuis or the museum would have been possible without the input and the work of the Scott family. Now Dora and her husband Frick arrived in South Africa from the Netherlands, and they came to Bloemfontein. Well, first they settled in Pretoria, and where they made close friendships with Gregor Boonzaier, Walter Battis, for example. And then when they relocated to Bloemfontein, they became prominent art patrons. They established the Bloemfontein Group. That was a very dynamic group of artists that worked together, and they played an enormous part of another donation by the Scots. This is an absolutely iconic artwork in our collection too, done by Rashada Krause. This is a portrait of the famous Mrs. Dora Scott. And interesting part of this portrait is you can see the background is quite different from the foreground. It's because her son Louis Scott painted the background. So it was a nice collaboration between the two artists. And in the far left corner, you will see a little Volkswagen Volla. And apparently Dora was driving in the streets of Bloemfontein with her little Volla, you know, fearless. And she actually had a social committee who helped her to raise funds. And they basically literally had bake sales at the back gardens of Oliewenhuis. Those who had been there, and with the money they raised, they actually bought artworks that's still in our collection, and good artworks by Leon de Bleekie, for example. So the work that the Scots done was absolutely invaluable for the establishment of the museum and the dynamics.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Now, if we look at more contemporary highlights, and maybe Esther wants to talk about this, I promised Matthew the whole of Stanley Pinker, and here you have it.
Yes, this is also a great artwork to discuss with groups and for guided tours, because it's so layered and there's so many images and there's so much to say about it, and you know, it works on so many different levels. But according to the artist, it's really about the triumph of good over evil. And you know, he questions the power relations between politics, you know, the power relations of politics, of the spiritual and war, but essentially says that there's triumph over it. Very interesting use of materials, the Tupperware lid on top. So it's a very layered, very, very rich work.
Yeah, no, fabulous, fabulous.
And
this is also one of your highlights, the Willem Boshoff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is might be one of my favorite artworks in the collection, because it's just so clever and inclusive. It consists of 94 carved wooden pieces in metal boxes. And as a sighted person, you do not have access to the object inside. So Willem Boshoff really changed the roles, where we as sighted people need a blind person to read the essay in Braille on the lid about the object inside, and then by feeling the object actually describe to us what they're feeling. Blind people have a very fine sense, very sensitive sense of touch. So by touching it, they experience it in a way that we as sighted people would never be able to experience it. The essays on top is also very interesting. It's very sort of unknown, out of use, difficult English words starting with the letter A. So this is the whole of the blind alphabet A is in our collection. And then I think he's busy at the moment, or he's just completed alphabet O. And hopefully later this year or early next year, there would be an exhibition at the Judith Art Center with alphabet A, and then the last part of the alphabet, sort of completing the circle.
Wonderful, yeah. This is also a highlight of the museum, and it's a video work by Paul Emanuel.
It's absolutely beautiful work. It was part of his series Transitions. We worked with a liminal, and the videos is really a beautiful visual depiction of a new army recruit. He's being shaven, and really as his hair is being shaven, he's changing his identity from to a soldier, to the identity of the soldier. It's about 14 minutes long, and it took almost 2 years to complete. There's different, it was shot in different locations, obviously at 3Si, but then also, there's also locations also include the Gariep Dam near Colesberg, the Cradle of Humankind in Gauteng, and then also a Free State farm near Brandfort, which also brings it nice and close to us in Bloemfontein in the Free State.
So those of you who don't know what 3Si stands for, it's the 3rd South African Infantry Battalion. Another highlight? the Noria Mabasa?
This is our most recent collection. And we were very excited to be able to finally have a Noria Mabasa in our collection. She's an absolutely phenomenal woman, and at the age of 82, she's still carving. She's the only female carver, or the sort of first female carver in South Africa. And this work has a very special story. She rescued the wood from, it was a burning piece of wood, and she rescued it by putting out the fire with the shawl, and then carved this beautiful. And this might very well be the last sculpture of this size. She is 82.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Now, we mentioned the Bloemfontein group, and Yolanda, I think, if you're not mistaken, you did a big study on them.
That's right, Willem. When I did my MA at Herod University of the Witwatersrand, we had to write a research report about a historical moment. So I couldn't think of a better topic to write about the founder collection of Oliewenhuis. And as we spoke earlier on about this interesting stories behind the group and while they started to work together. Now, interesting enough, this is the group initially started off with founding members that they were Frans Clarout, Renée Leroux, the beautiful women in that photograph, Alexander Podlashuk, Eben van der Merwe, Marianne Podlashuk. And then within a 10-year period, they expanded the group. They also invited then Mike Edwards, Fayetta Neville Varney, Arthur Contral, and Walter Westbrook. So basically what I did was, you see, unfortunately, there's very little written about the Free State art scene at all, the beginnings of an art scene in Bloemfontein. So I went through heaps and heaps of archival material that consisted of newspaper clippings, and I constructed a timeline of what happened in the Free State. And again, it came out that the Bloemfontein group played an enormous part into bringing new ideas and concepts to a very conservative art scene. The work of, for example, Renée Leroux and Eben van der Merwe showed abstractism, and they brought new styles like expressionism and to a conservative art scene. And unfortunately, they were shunned from the local art societies in Bloemfontein. They weren't invited to their exhibitions. And believe me, there were exhibitions in this little town. Unfortunately, they weren't included because the society leaders just felt that their work is too contemporary.
So there was also an exhibition, if I'm not mistaken, curated by Fred Scott, the founder collector's son, if I'm not mistaken. And this is the cover of the catalogue. And you mentioned all those wonderful artists. So these are a couple of pages from the catalogue. Iris Ampenberger, Stefan Ampenberger.
Yeah, like for example, the Ampenbergers, they were basically gypsies, and they traveled the country in a caravan. And then only when I went through so many slides and old photographs, and obviously the Scott brothers were a wealth of knowledge to me, then I started to understand Stefan's work. And even this work being displayed together with the Pierneef, I can see stylistically these artists were actually advanced. Fred Scott did this amazing exhibition, and I actually just built onto that. I use this catalogue actually quite often because, like I said, there's very little information even formally written up about a Free State art scene. So so the Bloemfontein group played an enormous role, and obviously supported by the Scots. And then after their 30th anniversary exhibition, and that was also unfortunately after the death of Professor Scott, his wife and his children established then the Scott Foundation, Scott Trust, and then formally at that exhibition they donated 24 artworks of the Bloemfontein group to Oliewenhuis Art Museum. So,
fascinating, yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, so
look at these two wonderful examples, yeah, of the pottery shoes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And here's a beautiful example of the abstractism that one can just imagine at that stage. I mean, we talk about from 1950 up until 1980. That was not very foreign for Bloemfontein,
absolutely,
yeah.
Neville Varney, and so
yes,
yeah.
and Westbrook,
Great story. Okay, now I want to move on to another exhibition that I saw many years ago. It was in the middle of winter, and when I left the hotel room, it was -12. So it was bitterly cold, and I happened to see this exhibition. And Baitumetse, maybe you can tell us a little bit about this wonderful exhibition.
Thank you, Wilhelm. I will do so. So the exhibition was held again last year from May to June. And it is very interesting and educative about the Basotho blankets. One cannot think about the Basotho people and not think about the blankets. And the most prominent of the blankets happens to be the Seanamarena. Now, it is interesting because the name actually comes from back in the day. Charles Henry Robertson's store was called Seanamarena. And the people of Lesotho started referring to the blankets because he traded in blankets as Seanamarena. And the name stuck. And the design and the motifs you see on the Seanamarena today were actually designed by his wife, Olive Robertson. And you see that on the Seanamarena blankets on the picture on the left. And the motifs are quite interesting because as much as they have a big significance to the Basotho people, they were actually designed by the manufacturers, but they in collaboration with the Sotho people, which is why you'll find motifs like the corn and the hat. But the different blankets actually signify different things. If you look on this picture, there's the first blanket on your right is actually a blanket given to the young people when they go to when they are initiates. And it signifies the journey from being a boy to being a manhood. So each blanket has a specific design and a specific purpose. And what was also interesting and is shown in this particular slide is that although a blanket is worn by both man and female, like both men and female can wear the same blanket, you wear it differently. And that was illustrated nicely during the exhibition last year by the mannequins you see in the middle of the room, where you practically see that women wear the lighter side of the blanket and men wear the darker side of the blanket outside. And an interesting factor of the Basotho blankets is the wearing lines. If it cannot be considered a Basotho blanket if it does not have the wearing lines. But the story behind the wearing lines is that it was actually not initially in the design, but it was a manufacturing default, like the machines made a mistake, but the Basotho people embraced it and made it their own. And so those lines now represent growth, and you cannot wear them horizontally. You are supposed to wear them vertically to sort of talk to how you the growth and the fertility of what they represent. And another interesting fact about the Basotho blanket is that a lot of them are designed to signify different big events. Like if a king is getting married, a blanket is designed. If a prince is born, a new blanket is designed in their honor. If the Pope visits Lesotho, a blanket is designed in their honor. And it's such a beautiful, it's really a beautiful culture that's developed from something that happened to be a gift to King Moshoeshoe the First in 1877. But it's become such an integral part of the Basotho culture, and you can almost not separate Basotho people from their blankets.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Here's another one. And now I want to move on to another very important exhibition that you had recently, Aesthetic Cooperatives, a Poly Street retrospective. And here I want to ask Cornelie to tell me how she went about putting the catalogue together and doing her research.
Hi, Wilhelm. Yeah, thank you. I should actually say it was Yolanda's brainchild, the idea of this exhibition, and I just went along for the ride. So if you think back on the Stylistic Links exhibition even, Yolanda noticed that there, within the sort of world of Poly Street, the Poly Street Centre in Johannesburg, you could see certain similarities between the African student artists and the professional white artists who taught at the centre. So what we realized is you get these different kinds of societal forms. We have, for example, kingdoms or nation states on the one hand. Then you can get kind of associations, people who are married or language groups or partnerships. But then there's a third kind of a societal form, fellowships. With fellowships, you could think of perhaps like neighbors or friendships. These guys are on equal footing. If you think about the nation state that I mentioned before, there are vertical power relations. But with fellowships, people are on equal footing. And then, so there aren't these vertical power relations. And moreover, these kinds of comings together are not permanent. They change. So we realized that the friendships of those professional artists and students at Poly Street, they created what we then termed an aesthetic cooperative. They worked together within this sort of an artistic world. They were friends. They mutually trusted each other, and there was a reciprocal influence or adaptations and engagement from the African side and from the sort of white professional side reciprocally. Perhaps, I'm not sure if you went to the next slide. But basically, so Cecil Scottness, he was a key figure at Poly Street, and perhaps his friendship and his relationship with Sidney Khumalo, we can see as being kind of indicative of this, these artistic friendships and aesthetic cooperatives, then, if you will, that developed at the center. Elsa Miles, I think her book is perhaps the most important one written on Poly Street. It's called the Poly Street, the Story of an Art Center. She calls these, she refers to them as these kind of unique interracial partnerships, is what she called them. And so there was these sort of feelings of solidarity and mutual trust and cooperation in this sort of a two-way street.
Yeah, and it is, sometimes people say, everybody knows it's Cecil Scottness and Fred Schimmel at the head, but they were not really teachers, they were more facilitators, as you indicated,
and co-partners in creating their work,
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Elsa Miles's book, and this is actually how I got onto this topic, because the publisher of the book, Jack Ginsberg, referred me to you. And I thought this might be a neat opportunity to look at the museum as well. I'm just going to page through that wonderful catalogue. This is the cover of the catalogue,
Yeah, you can actually, I have a copy here as well, there you can see the front page.
Yeah, there you go. It's a lovely one.
Sidney Khumalo, it's now difficult to see, but if you maybe go back to the Sidney Khumalo, just the previous slide, there in the corner, he was an African artist, and you would think that these would be wood carvings, but in fact, he was a modeler. They modeled in terracotta and they cast in bronze. So you can see that sort of a two-way exchange. And maybe if you went back to the Scotness just quickly for a second, it's not difficult to see, but these, especially the print, they have African mask-like faces. So in both directions, the white artists and the African artists influenced one another.
Great, great. So Fred Schimmel.
Fred Schimmel is interesting because those are serigraphs or screen prints, and they're abstract landscapes. So like Yolanda also mentioned, here we see sort of abstract art, strange for us in the Free State at a stage. And these are from Oliewenhuis's own collection. Some of them were also sourced from the William Humphreys Gallery in Kimberley. So these are local artworks. Here you see the Ezra Mlegai, and once again, bronze. Those are bronze casts, the sculpture. And then also he drew in pencil, he drew in ink. Yeah.
Ngatane, yes.
Of course, was a central. So what we have here, Ngatane and Diran Sigladi, they were two of the main proponents of the township art movement. So various things developed at the center. On the one hand, we had the European white artists who were trained sort of classically, if I might say. And then we had the sculptors who sculpted them not as wood carvers, but in bronze. And then the township art movement, where these guys from childhood, and in the end, I mean, they had the illustrious international careers even, documented and recorded sort of the daily urban life in the township surrounding Johannesburg. Diran Sigladi, these guys, and they were impressionists. They used sort of impressionist techniques. They painted in watercolor, which, you know, is a difficult kind of a medium to use. They did it masterfully.
Yeah, Dumile was also part of the group, even Walter Battis.
That was an interesting story. Ngatane, who we saw before, he actually passed away at quite a young age from tuberculosis, and he met Dumile in hospital. Saw that they were children, as I said. The boy could draw. He noticed something in him, a talent, a raw talent maybe, and he convinced and encouraged Dumile to attend the classes at Polly Street.
Yeah, Walter Battis also there, and Yolanda might tell us about the installation. The next couple of slides are all about what it looked like, the exhibition looked like.
It was an amazing experience to work with these national treasures and borrowing them from Humphreys. And for me, you know, as curator and both playing the role of curator and education officer, I just felt like this is part of the school curriculum. Why don't we just make it visible and narrate this for the students? It's such an important movement, and so yes, we also had to almost use what we could get hold of, and obviously some of the works on the walls were not particularly or specifically made at the center or at that, but we could clearly see that stylistic similarities that happened between artist and mentor, and that for me was a big emphasis. So for this exhibition we had a lot of school groups coming through. We distributed the beautiful catalog everywhere and to schools all around, and we just literally handed it out because it is a lovely resource book, you know, to have. Well, I don't know if you guys know, but maybe Cornelia can say her experience or tell us about her experiences of using a nice library. Well,
thank you for
yes.
Thank you for mentioning that. Basically, every source mentioned in the bibliography here in the catalog, I found or I used from Oliewenhuis's own library. Oliewenhuis actually has quite an extensive art library. catalogs, books on artists. If I can think of a very important one that I was just thinking about this afternoon before was E.J. de Jager's Images of Man, the contemporary South African Black art and artists. There was, for example, the review of Villa and Scott Niss's exhibition by the Stellenbosch Art Museum, Sue Williamson's South African Art Now, Art in the South African Township by Young. Key resources on South African history of South African art that is kept in Oliewenhuis's own library. So if you ever need any.
Great, yeah. My favorite work is this one from that exhibition. I hope it is in your collection and not in the Humphreys. Walter Battis, and why I like it is because of his abstract nature. You know, he was a keen researcher of South African rock art. This work for me, you know, you can see the idea of the palimpsests areas sort of painted over and then re-inscribed with all these calligraphic forms. And those calligraphic forms, he researched quite extensively, as you can see on the image on the left. This is a page from his book of 1958, The Art of Africa. And he traced that from images that he saw on the flat rocks near Douglas, which is also not too far from you. So that to me is very significant. But when you look closely at this work, you see a new type of symbol emerging, and that of course refers to his famous book Alphabet that you see on the right-hand side. Many people think that his interest in the Foo concept started in the 1970s, long before that, you know, in the 50s already. So that's certainly one of my favorite works on that Polly Street exhibition of yours.
Walter Battis was only sort of peripherally involved actually at the center itself, but he did make sporadic he visited, and I think that you can see some influence there definitely as well.
Yeah, although for sure. As you would say, Scotland. Yeah, for sure. Now, this is the current exhibition that is on at the moment, Gender, Politics and Identity, and maybe Yolanda wants to take us through this one.
Thank you, Wilhelm. Yes, I want to just point out here that Baitemetsi Moluwabi, that is also...
Sorry, Yolanda, I just muted you. Ladies and gentlemen, can I just ask everybody to mute themselves while our speakers are talking? Sorry, thank you very much. Sorry, Yolanda.
And I heard a question about where on earth is the Oliewenhuis Museum. It is in the heart of Bloemfontein, in the Free State.
That's correct. So the Gender, Politics, Identity exhibition is...
There's no sound. Absolutely no sound.
In our permanent display areas. But I took the visual art curriculum and I decided I'm going to rearrange the whole permanent collection area. And luckily, Baitu helped me. She played an integral part of the curating as well as the selection of the artworks for this exhibition. So she worked with me through the curriculum. And it formed part of her work integrated learning program that she had to complete at the Central University of Technology. So as education officer, I take it upon me to really teach. So when you come and do such a program with me, you're going to really work and learn. So we came up with the concept and we curated together and we worked together, and I think beautiful things happened with this process. If you want to go to the slides of the exhibition spaces, yeah, we worked our way through different themes. We started with the landscape and body, spiritualism, where we deliberately placed works next to each other. You will see the beautiful Stanley Pinker next to the Pierneef, that will obviously provoke nice conversations amongst our viewers. But viewing the Sian Finelli through, you know, and see the Rustenburg Kloof in the background, you can actually see how the contour lines are being mimicked in the painting of Pierneef. So as curators, we just really we were very creative while putting up this exhibition. There the beautiful Noria Mabasa is also standing, because her work also involve themes of spirituality. And then I think you said you want to say something about the Christian.
Just before that, the work on the left is the big. I wasn't exaggerating when I said the Gwela Goodman is enormous. There you can get a sense of the scale. The Christo Coetzee, also very important to me. It was also a work that featured on my 2018 exhibition at the Standard Bank Gallery. So I have really fond memories, and I'm very pleased to see it again in this exhibition. This is another, you know, I mentioned Standard Bank. This is also a phenomenal work in the collection. It's by Judith Mason. And this is the first opportunity I had to work together with the Oliewenhuis, because in 2008, I curated the big Judith Mason exhibition. And again, I traveled throughout the country to source works. And when I got to the Oliewenhuis, there was a bit of a scramble, because this work was lost. Nobody knew where it was. And so I bumped into one of the workers there, and I asked him, how long have you been in the museum? He said, 25 years. I said, do you know where the Judith Mason is? He said, yes, come, let me show you. So that was, so this is, I have very fond memories of this particular work.
Yeah. Yeah, so gender, politics, identity, we moved, you know, your way through the halls, where we worked a lot with female identity and body politics. And then in this room specifically, I also focused on male identity and the tension and current debates there are about male identity too. And then if you'd know the exhibition halls, then one would now move in down the pathway where you will come across a beautiful work of Bambo Sibiya. And I think Baitu.
Baitu, tell us, I think this is one of your favorite works. So talk to us about this work on that exhibition.
Thank you, Wilhelm. I'd actually like to start with the previous slide and just highlight as much as, so Yolanda already mentioned that throughout the exhibition, we worked with ideas of identity and politics. And I think this room specifically talks to those issues so beautifully. If you look to the left, there is a work by Nomusa Makubu, which happens to be my absolute favorite work. And the way we placed them in this room starts such a beautiful conversation surrounding on how women and men interact with each other, which is an reoccurring theme in Bambo Sibiya's work, which is in the next slide, where he works with township identity. Now he's from a township in Johannesburg called Kwatema, and he is very interested and influenced by what he experienced growing up there, how he saw the single women, a lot of single women raising up families and providing security and providing love and trying by all means to really educate and bring up their children in a safe environment, given what was happening surrounding them. So his work is very much an appreciation towards how his mother raised him And if you look at these particular works, there's a reoccurring theme about alcohol and the relationship men have with alcohol and how in turn they relate with women. Now, it's a very interesting piece because each person who views it and interacts with it can relate to it to a certain degree, but also brings their tacit knowledge and then make their own narrative of what it means, what the three pieces mean together and what the three pieces mean on their own. So on the one hand, one viewer will see, will focus on the women and how in the one picture, in the one on the left, the women seem to, the woman seems to be a prize, is wearing a gift bag over their head, and the man is gazing at him. So this work is also very interesting to me because of how the characters that are being portrayed also interact with each other, and how you see throughout the three works that really he has a deep appreciation, and he really looks at the relationship between women and men and children in the township from a very interesting view, like how he depicts them and the elements that he puts in this linograph. This is also very interesting because it's a very big lino print, which is, but it's, if you look at the detail, you see how much work and appreciation he puts into this. And it starts a very nice conversation with the room as a whole, and the idea behind putting this exhibition together.
Okay, fine. I'm just going to gallop through the last two slides of this particular show because I want to go on to other interesting features of the museum as well. This is a phenomenal space. Esther, tell us about this one. It's very unlike the Cape Dutch building we saw up to now.
Yes, it's called the Reservoir, and it used to be a functional reservoir. And the interesting story about it is that when one of the previous curators, Stefan Hund, was looking for a space to install or to construct the African carousel on, plans were asked from the Department of Works, and they saw that there was this huge space below the back garden of Oliewenhuis Art Museum underneath the grass. That stage, the only access was one manhole, and there was water about 1/2 meter deep. Yes, it was converted to be able, so that we are able to exhibit artworks. The pillars are still original, and the roof is still original. Then obviously the floors and the sides of the building, had to be converted so that, we can install artworks. They estimated that it was built in 1899, between 1899 and 1902. So it was actually during the Anglo-Boer War. So it's an old structure, and also the interesting thing is also they say that the pillars weren't so much constructed as it was what was left when all the stone was carved out. So it's a very interesting space, a very interesting story. Yeah. And it's a wonderful exhibition space, and we've hosted numerous very interesting and exciting exhibitions in there.
Oh, fantastic! You mentioned the garden behind the main building, and that is now a wonderful sculpture garden. Yes. Boito, you want to tell us a thing or two about some of these works?
Yes, they are in the back gardens between the main building and the reservoir, and they are really quite a hit with the little children because it's art you can relate to. They can relate to. It's not it's as much as it's conceptual art. It's really art. It's cheap, and it triggers an interest as to why is this chair fallen over? Why are these chairs here? And why are these sheep here? And what do they mean?
Yeah, and these are bronze chairs, if I'm not mistaken, by Guy de Twee. Yeah.
Yes, they are. And we also have little doves that are spread all over Oliewenhuis, and the children absolutely love them, and they also are in close proximity to the carousel, the African carousel, but the children want to take pictures and want to touch the sculptures and want to really engage
Sit on them.
sit on them and engage on a really simple basis. And this the one on the wire sculpture is also a very big hit because it is so intricately made. If you think about the fact that it's made out of wire and it's such a nice bouquet to admire and take pictures with. The children are a little scared of the Medusa because they wonder, why does this woman have snakes on her head? But really, the park and the sculpture park is a beautiful space for families, and it is a relaxed space where art isn't as structured, if I can say that.
Yeah, so speaking of relaxing in the garden, this was also a special project, if I'm mistaken, about the Mosaic project. Esther, you were involved in this one.
Yes, that was a project I've done when I was education officer, and basically it was about 15 local people involved in creating 5 large-scale functional sculptures. Some of them were artists, some of them had no formal art training, so it was quite an interesting mix of skills. And they were really given the task they first created little maquettes, and they were given the task to create a functional sculpture using cement and mosaic. And it was fantastic to give them the opportunity to work large scale and in this supported environment.
Yeah, lovely. And this, I think, is in front of the main building, the labyrinth here.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That's a very that's a very recent addition. Zarine Rood, should I speak a little bit about the labyrinth? Zarine Rood gifted this labyrinth to us for her 60th birthday. She's got a great passion for labyrinths and have created and designed many labyrinths. And for a long time, actually, she really wanted a labyrinth that's accessible to everyone. And she thought, Oliewenhuis is a really good space to do that. So it was constructed, it's open to the public to use, and it's a wonderful meditative experience to walk the labyrinth.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Bertha, you mentioned the African carousel. Tell us about this enigmatic work.
So the African carousel was started as a project that started in 1994, and it took 3 years to complete. And it is basically sculptures, big sculptures that children can ride on, and it incorporates music and movement and art. And so there's 17 sculptures which all go around. It's a merry-go-round that goes, and the interesting thing about the sculptures is that they're based on sort of African and English mysticism. Like the characters are almost are a mixture of all the different cultures. So you have wood sculptures, you have metal sculptures, and they all they exist very nicely together and make for a very fun activity for the whole family at Oliewenhuis.
Lovely, lovely.